Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. It's so nice to have you back here. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, I want to talk about, in a nuanced way, lowering your expectations in partnership so that you can, ironically, be much happier and fulfilled. Now, admittedly, this is a clickbaity title intended to draw in your attention, and obviously the totality of the situation on partnership and relationships today and expectations is much larger than the 3 words, lower your expectations, obviously. But that's why you're listening to this podcast, right? To get all the nuance on it. So just know that this is a nuanced topic, and I am never speaking in terms of abusive partnerships. This is all about lowering your expectations so that you can be open to being surprised in a positive way more. Before I recorded this podcast, I thought back to a Instagram live I did a couple of years ago with my Aunt Diane, and I don't know how far back it is, but it's there somewhere if you want to dig. And I remember one of the funniest and yet most profoundly wise things she had said, and she has been happily married for a long time, is that if you want to be happy with your man, and I'm not just going to say man, but I'm going to extend that to partner. If you want to be happy with a partner who is loving and healthy and just humanly flawed, you need to get comfortable with them disappointing you. And that is something that I believe that a lot of people in today's day and age do not have the capacity for. They do not have the capacity to be disappointed. In many ways, we are toddlers in partnership, not getting our way and throwing a tantrum about it. I saw a TikTok this week, which I posted on my Patreon along with a response, but I'm going to talk about it very briefly here as well. And there was a woman saying, I want an alpha male. Actually, she said double alpha, but I'm just going to say alpha here. She said, I want a man who is smarter, who is more ambitious than I am, more fit than I am, more intellectual than I am, etc. Because otherwise, where's the attraction? And I saw another video from a different woman, maybe a year ago. I cannot remember the exact one for the life of me, but she said something along the lines of, I have a lot of masculine energy. And so in order for me to be attracted to a man, his masculine energy needs to be bigger than my masculine energy. And this triggered me a lot, and it triggered a lot of people, and the video went viral. And half the people in there were like, yes, finally, someone understands, me too. And the other half were like, who's to say that the guy with more masculine energy is going to want a woman who's masculine? And obviously it's not, there's more nuance to that. And I don't think it's black and white. Personally, I'm very masculine in my business, although I have a more feminine business model than most. And when I'm when I say masculine, I'm talking about kind of some stereotypically masculine qualities, like being very structured. I do, even when I'm speaking, my voice is deeper, I'm more assertive. Whereas in my relationship, I'm a gooey puddle of mush, and I'm emotional and intuitive. So it's not like I'm this masculine person overall. I categorize these different energies. But a lot of people who want to feel attraction but don't understand polarity are not realizing that they've got these different sides of themselves, and could benefit from using one energy for their career and another energy in their relationship. So when I saw that video last year, along with this video this year, all about like, if I want to be attracted to the guy I'm with, his masculine energy needs to be bigger than mine. I think back to when I used to have this mindset. And even up until a few years ago, when I was no longer struggling with relationship anxiety, I still had this mindset. Even though I was confident in my decision to stay with my partner, I still wasn't feeling attracted toward my partner. The difference was that I wasn't freaking out about it. I was okay with the fact that I wasn't attracted to him much. But deep down, I still had desires about where I hoped this relationship would go. And what I didn't realize at the time was that the ways in which I were trying to get my guy to be more quote unquote masculine were emasculating. And it manifested as me trying to control him. And it did the exact opposite of what I was hoping it would do. So just as an example, I would present my like masculine energy to see if he would top it as a test, just to make sure he had more masculine energy than I did. And then when inevitably he was like, well, I don't want to have to fight you. I don't want to be in competition with you. So he would just yield to my masculine energy. He would go into his feminine and kind of go along with whatever I forced him to do or shamed him to do or controlled him to do. And then inevitably I would resent him for not putting up a fight. And I'd feel like a praying mantis because I felt like I should eat him if he didn't man up to my made up standards. Or I think is it praying mantis or is it a black widow? I don't know. There's one species of bug out there where the women copulate with their male counterparts and then they eat them. So there's that. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but in an attempt to check to make sure that my guy was masculine enough, or masculine by my definition of masculine, I would come at him with this aggressive energy and like hope that he would set a boundary and hope that he would top my masculine energy with his. And inevitably he was like, I don't want to fight you. He was more interested in harmony. So what that did is it forced him into his more passive surrendering energy. You could argue that he went into his feminine. Again, because he's more interested in harmony. But it wasn't the kind of harmony that was fulfilling for either of us because I didn't want to be controlling and he didn't want to be surrendering. We actually would have preferred the opposite. He would have loved to have been trusted enough to take more control, and I would have loved to have relaxed and surrendered because I was already leading a lot in my career, and I would have loved a place to relax and soften and be taken care of at home. So when I was more in a very masculine energy, it put us in competition. And being in my masculine energy in partnership is not really my true nature. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm definitely more so speaking to heterosexual folks, women who are in partnerships with men. That is my main niche, not because I want to be exclusive or think that that's superior to any relational dynamic. It's mainly because I'm a coach and I coach from personal experience. So if you're listening and you're a man in a relationship with a woman, or you're in a non-binary relationship, you can still talk about masculine, feminine energy and apply it to yourself. So just know I'm not singling anybody out. I haven't been in a non-binary relationship, so I don't think it would be very responsible of me to speak on behalf of what that's like. Little segue there. But just apply it to yourself, listen to the whole podcast and see how my dynamic relates to your dynamic and what I've changed and how that's improved the situation. So you can always, the really cool thing about understanding energy dynamics and masculine, feminine energy, regardless of gender, is that you can play with these. You can always switch sides. As you guys probably hear me talk about Argentine tango all the time. I switch sides all the time. And if I want to learn how to lead better, sometimes I go into the follower role just to experience it from the other side and then switch back. There's no rules here. It's all just play. It's all just dance. Anyway, when it comes to this dynamic, this didn't happen to us so much financially. My biggest memories of us being kind of combative in terms of our masculine energies, our little spiritual jujitsu that we had, this happened a lot in terms of spirituality, and it happened in terms of personal development. There was a time when I wished that my partner had a higher level of consciousness than I did, whatever that means. For me, it meant that my husband would, or my boyfriend at the time, now husband, I wished that he would linger his gaze with me a little bit longer. I wished that he wouldn't look away. And so there really is no graceful way to make someone bore their eyes into you. But the way I tried to do it was by boring my eyes into him as a spiritual demonstration. I was hoping he would reciprocate and bore his eyes back into mine. I would demonstrate what I thought presence looked like, even though it was not presence, because true presence by very definition does not have an agenda and it's not manipulative. So it's one thing if I'm gazing into his eyes with curiosity and appreciation without really caring whether he returns my gaze or not, versus I'm boring into his eyes, definitely caring whether he looks away or not. And this has now turned into an awkward staring contest where he's like, "What are you doing?" All it did was make him very uncomfortable and glance away and kind of retreat into his own safe space and play video games or whatever. Other things that I did were send him videos of what other men's coaches were telling him he should do, which ironically, I don't know if you ever look at the comments, it's never guys being like, "Thank you so much, bro." It's always women being like, "Sending this to my husband." And I'm in my head, I'm like, don't send it to your husband. It's gonna do the opposite of what you think it's gonna do. I've already tried it 1,000 times. It doesn't work. Stop. Okay. I speak from experience as someone who really should have started a podcast that was called, The Most Controlling Woman Ever, tells you how to stop controlling, and I still suck at it. Sometimes I have to apologize 20 times a day. I am sorry for trying to control you. So I was insufferable trying to change my partner. I've been thinking about creating an episode called 10 Ways I Start Fights with My Husband and 10 Ways I Emasculate My Man almost every day. Getting better at it though. It used to be 100. So I cringe now, and admittedly, when I get into podcast mode, I definitely feel more grounded, and because eyes are on me, I behave better. But if you guys saw me behind the scenes, I fuck up all the time. So just know that I'm human, okay? I have not mastered this. The only reason that I feel confident talking about this stuff is because I used to be so bad at this that I feel like help more than the average person, because I have issues. I have trauma that makes me very controlling. And when I realized the extent of how bad of a problem it was, I dove headfirst into getting help. I got coaching. I read books aggressively, sometimes over and over and over and over, because my relationship would get better when I got better. So I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. And like I said, don't listen to this podcast thinking Natalie's really good at this. No, Natalie is really bad at this. That's why she's had to study so much. And that's why she feels qualified to talk about this, because she's cringing with love towards her past self. Another thing I used to do is constantly compare his process, whether it was spiritual, financial, intellectual, physical even. I used to tell him he wasn't stretching enough. He's only working out too much. He's strengthening, but not stretching. He's not doing enough mobility work, blah, blah, blah. He's not reading the right kind of books. He's not doing his self-care enough. He's not getting enough sleep. He's getting too much sleep. He's eating too much of this, not enough of that. If I was spending my mornings meditating and stretching and he spent his sleeping, I thought I was being more ambitious. But looking back, the irony was that he was the one with a booming, busy business, and mine was barely making my own ends meet. So of course he used his self-care to sleep, while my self-care, with my free schedule, even though I wasn't making that much money, of course I spent my self-care reading. I had lots of time. He didn't. So it's worth zooming out of your situation once in a while and realize that your partner's definition of growth and self-care might look very different from yours, and it's still just as valuable, especially if you put your strengths together towards a larger vision, which is what's really important to talk about. I just dropped a podcast episode last week about having a vision together. So if you haven't listened to that one, definitely go back and listen to it. Even though my then boyfriend, now husband, was working really hard on his business, I was working hard in a different way. I was working hard studying and still working, but it was a kind of work that was very draining. And guess what? I felt resentful because I was trying so hard to change my man and he wasn't changing. It's exhausting trying to change someone, especially if they don't want to change. So I was really resentful and I was exhausted. And rather than examining my exhaustion related to my controlling behavior, I blamed him for not yielding to my control. So I felt resentful, exhausted. My guy didn't feel like a man. And sadly, I was completely missing what he was bringing to the table, which was a lot. I mentioned some of this in my last episode, so definitely take a listen. Now, let's just go back in time for a moment. I'm going to talk about, that perspective of I want my man to, or I want my masculine identifying partner to be more masculine, have more masculine energy than I do, be smarter, richer, more intellectual, more spiritual, blah, 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 blah. I want to talk about when this mindset might have been helpful in history. So this mindset, in my opinion, is helpful during a time in society when women are being bought, where a dowry has to be presented in order to get married. Remember those days? Probably not. None of us were alive. But it would benefit the woman to go for a man who has more land, more money, more power, because it would ensure her survival, which was a real thing to worry about back then. But it didn't exactly make the woman happy because thanks to patriarchy, a lot of men would use that power that they had to take advantage of women being potentially tyrannical and abusive, knowing that women could not leave. But it did put food on the table, whereas in the past it might not have. So it's more, it's going from potentially not having land and food to having land and food. That is empowerment. But, if you're still being abused and taken for granted and being in a tyrannical household, it's not exactly empowerment, especially from our perspective, right? Might have been empowerment for them, but certainly not for us. And from this dynamic, boom, is born what we might call modern feminism. And thank God, it turns out that women are as capable, if not sometimes more capable than men. Guess what? Women can manage money. Women can start businesses. Women can make good decisions. Women can vote and drive cars and get jobs and create incredible things and really do anything that men can do. What a revelation. So it would make sense that this would be completely liberating to not have to depend on men for survival. Thank God. But, and there is a but, the desire and expectation for a man of higher value than she did not go away. But because our baseline has raised, our standards for men have raised astronomically as well, beyond what might be reasonable at this point. So women have, thanks to the incredible power of women are so incredibly extraordinary now that it is very difficult for most men to surpass them in the name of being high value and quote unquote more masculine. Also, it puts them in the position to have to be in competition with us, puts men in the position to have to be in competition with women in many cases. So if she suddenly starts making more money or growing more quickly spiritually, he is no longer superior to her in all the ways and is no longer considered to be valuable, which is really sad. And I've seen this a lot in cases where Maybe in the beginning, a woman is with a man who is making more money than she is in the early days of dating. And then years into their relationship, she somehow surpasses him financially. And even though they're in a financially stable situation and they don't technically combined need more money, she doesn't respect him as much, even though she respected him before. And it also works in the reverse, where a lot of guys get really insecure about this, even though things are good. The bills are getting paid. She's happy with her career. He feels emasculated. So it's an issue on both sides, where women expect men to be making more, or to be more spiritual, or to be more attractive, blah, 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 blah. And it also happens in the reverse, where guys hold themselves to the standard that they need to be bigger, more important than the woman. In my opinion, it's potentially damaging for both people, because sometimes reality just doesn't work out that way. It's a big ouch. It's a big ouch for both people. So yeah, as I said, there's many women who meet wonderful men who had maybe a little bit more power or more finances, more whateverness in the beginning. And then when the woman surpassed them, they fell prey to the alpha male mentality, and they start to nitpick their man's masculinity by suggesting he become more ambitious, make more money, do more personal development, etc. And of course, it's quite predictable, he would respond by getting defensive and deflated. I mean, if someone comes to me and tells me, you should make more, you're not making enough, I get defensive too. In fact, I've had that exact conversation when my husband was making way more money than I was back in the days when I ran a yoga business, and we were thinking about how the heck are we going to buy a house in Orange County or even just afford rent. He was on my ass a lot, saying, you really need to make more money. And I was like, I'm on it. I'm trying. It's been a few years, but I'm still stuck. I mean, I was making a decent amount, but not enough to live up to the budget or plan that we both had in mind. So, and I remember what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that. You're not doing enough. You're not making enough, because guess what? My business is my masculine. So even though my husband is criticizing my business, he's criticizing my masculine side, and I got critical and defensive. It just doesn't work. If you want to keep trying that, go for it. But if you're tired of that, I want to present a different perspective. I want you to imagine it's like the visual that I get for this dynamic for women. It's almost as though you passed him on a race and turned around and were like, I'm beating you. What the fuck? And he's like, I wasn't aware that this relationship was a race to the finish line. And like, when did I stop being enough? Right? So rather than appreciating what each person individually brings to the table in the direction of your shared dreams, it has become about making sure that we maintain this toxic definition of polarity, where the man or masculine being has to run faster than you or the woman or the feminine being in order to be man enough, even if there really isn't a good reason to, other than to fit a weird societal mold. Now, it might be worth it. I know I'm talking a lot about finances in this case, because it's a good measurement of power in today's day and age, but if finances is not something you can relate to, you can find other ways where it does relate to you. But I'm going to keep going with the finances one, because it's a really easy example, and a lot of people might relate to it. It might be worth examining whether you actually want your partner to work harder and make more money so that you can have something XYZ. What would that be? Are you thinking that if your partner were to make more money, you would be able to relax? Why? Would you relax because you suddenly stopped worrying about what people would think of you? Would you relax because you'd be able to stop working as much? Would you relax because you could finally afford a more comfortable bed? Would you relax because you could finally afford therapy? Would you relax because you could have more comfortable clothes? Okay, so notice that this rather than just like this objective desire for more money, we're now seeing it as a means to an end. But then I ask you, why not own that desire directly rather than attacking your partner's masculinity or providership or ambition? Personally, this year I realized I don't need or want to be a big boss babe. I know how to be one. That was a helpful time in my life and very empowering. But now that I know that I don't have to depend on a man, it's nice to choose to depend on one. So there's a difference. A lot of people women especially, but not necessarily. A lot of women feel like they need to prove something, prove that they're capable of doing what men can do. Even though deep down they maybe don't necessarily want to be doing that, they just feel like they have to prove themselves, but it might not even be in their nature. For some it is, and that's awesome, and I applaud that for you. But for me, it wasn't. I just felt like I needed to prove to some arbitrary person that I was capable of making millions. And I didn't, but I don't feel like I need to. I don't need to make millions. I'm very content with just making what I make. Yeah, it's great. But it's nice to know that I can, but I don't have to. And it's nice to choose to depend on a man and be taken care of. It's really nice. It really is. Spoiler alert, I saw Barbie recently, and one person asked me for my thoughts on it. I don't have that many, but I have one thought on it. And if you don't want a spoiler, skip ahead to like a minute if you don't want to hear this. I loved Barbie so much. I loved it. But I also saw a world the Barbie world, where women had created so much abundance from themselves and yet continue to hold men to a higher standard than they held themselves, because they probably all had the ick, because from this mindset of I need a man who's bigger, better, stronger, more ambitious. Well, the women are up the top, so there's not much higher to go. So inevitably, the men were like, F that, and became second-class passive citizens with less ambition. So, of course, and granted, Barbie didn't talk anything about dating dynamics. The only thing I would have liked if they did. I really would have liked if there was more on attraction. But the only thing I saw on attraction was that Barbie was not attracted to Ken. Probably because she had this idea that she's waiting for a guy that has more ambition than she does, which might not exist. So anyway, that's all I had. But a hypothetical possibility outside of the movie, if this were the case, imagine a society where, women have accomplished everything and there's really not, they've maximized their own masculine energy, and most men really can't top that. The few men that, for whatever reason, did manage to have a higher perceived level of masculine energy than all the women, I want you to think about this, just hypothetical. If there's like a couple extraordinary quote unquote double alpha, whatever the F that means, as that woman in the video I mentioned at the very beginning mentioned, let's say there is a couple of perceivedly double alpha men. Okay, imagine this. All the women who want these double alphas are going to be competing for them. You have like most women in the world competing over 1.01% of the double alpha men. And assuming that this top dog double alpha male wanted a top dog woman, which he might not, he might not want to have to stay at that double alpha level. In order, he might not want a super, I hate saying alpha, but it's like the only thing that comes to mind right now. He might not want that kind of woman, but assuming he did, why? Why would all these women want these like top 10 guys in the world just to have a certain social status or be seen a certain way, to be on a yacht? Like, why? And the other thing I want to point out, let's say that 90% of the women want 10% of the guys. What's to stop men from taking advantage of this and creating a harem or never committing? So just a thought. If we have a society where all the women want men who are more masculine than they are, there's not going to be a lot of them, because women are already inhabiting a lot of masculine energy now, especially the very successful ones. So they're going to be in competition with each other trying to get these few men, and they're going to be in this delusion that that's the only guy they can be attracted to. That's the only guy they can build a wonderful life with. And it's just not true. It's really, really not. I really caution against all women having this perspective. There's plenty of wonderful men out there that don't need to necessarily make more money than you, especially if you're already making a lot. There's plenty of wonderful men out there that don't need to be more powerful or more seemingly spiritually evolved than you. And I would actually argue that we need to look at our definitions of power and being more evolved, because a lot of times, I can speak from experience, I used to think I was more spiritually evolved than my husband, and then years later I was deeply humbled and realized that he's got his own wisdom beyond what I could have imagined, and I deeply respect my guy's way of thinking now, very deeply. It was actually quite a wake-up call, quite an embarrassment when I realized that I was disrespecting this brilliant human who just lived life and thought differently than I did. But when push came to shove and I ended up in some really shitty situations and suddenly he was able to help me out on things that I had no idea what to do, you bet my ass I was really grateful for the way that guy thinks, and was so grateful to have this man in my corner. So just because his spiritual process or his intellectual process or his physical process, like his workout routine, doesn't look like yours, doesn't mean he's not on a process, or it doesn't mean he's not on a journey. It doesn't mean he's not evolving. It just might look different than yours. And a beautiful relationship inquires and invites us to expand our ideas of what is considered to be evolution for each person in partnership. And with that said, it's important to know what you want in your life and to tell your partner what you want in life and work together using your collective different viewpoints and strengths to get those things. So that's very important. I say this perspective of he needs to be smarter, richer, better looking, more fit, etc. It's going to create so much anxiety for everyone involved. To me, it's that more perspective all over again. So if this is you, I say, yes, lower your standards. It doesn't mean lowering your desires. I'll talk about that in a second. You don't need your man or your woman to shoot for the top 0.01%. And I gotta say, in today's day and age, there's a lot of messaging out there saying that you should. For example, if you live in Southern California, where I'm from, you might see a lot of messages that convince you that you're worthless if you're not extraordinary. And by definition, not everybody can be extraordinary. Most people will be ordinary. So you don't need to compare your partner to Ryan Reynolds. If you're a guy and you're with a woman, you don't need the hottest girl to prove that you're a man, that you scored that chick. Like, it doesn't matter what people think. It's really about how you feel in the partnership and whether you feel loved. I am telling you, it's a stupid game. It's a stupid game trying to get other people to be impressed by your partner. It gets old really quick. And even if other people are impressed, the satisfaction is not that great. There's plenty of great partners out there that aren't extraordinary looking, that or acting, that will be perfectly happy to build a life with you and desire to make you happy. So when I say lower your expectations without lowering your desires, I mean this. Let's say you want your man to make more money. Again, I mentioned this a little bit before. Why? Do you want a new rug, new drapes? Do you want to work fewer hours yourself? Do you want to be able to afford a therapist? Do you want to be able to afford a massage every week or a manicure and pedicure every week? If you know Ramit Sethi, he has a popular podcast and book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He asks you to define what a rich life looks to you. A lot of people, when you ask them this question, like, what does your rich life look like? And it doesn't mean you're conventionally rich. It just means that your life feels internally rich because of how you've designed it. What's your rich life? Don't say that your rich life is to be debt-free. That's a given. Of course you want to be debt-free, but what's your unique rich life? For me, my rich life is I would really love to have a balcony, a place in Colombia that is located in an area in Medellin where macaws can land on my balcony. You hear how specific that is? Like, that is how I will know I have a rich life. And by the way, that's affordable for us. In fact, that's exactly what we're doing. Right now, Preston and I are looking for homes in Colombia where we plan to move and potentially raise our future kids. We are actively seeking out like where the birds fly in Medellin so that we can figure out, and we have to figure out like how high off the ground is it going to be on 6th, 7th, 8th floor, and trying to find a bird balcony. This is what we want. This is what our rich life would look like. So you don't have to lower your desires, but you can lower your expectations for the human and allow a little bit of room for your partner to fuck up and not meet every expectation, but you can still hold the desire for your vision for the life that you want. So if your desire is for a bird balcony or to get a massage every week or to work fewer hours than you're currently working, there's many different ways to achieve that may or may not require your partner asking for a raise. So you can have the desire and you can share it without the expectation that your partner fulfill it immediately and without the expectation that they fulfill it in the way that you think they should. Maybe you think if you were in their position, you would get this desire met in a certain way, but there's a lot of times there's many different ways to get desires met. And sometimes just naming the desire and then letting it go signals to your partner to have that desire on the back of their mind and let them fulfill it in their own time. I have noticed this to be the case. When I let go of needing my partner to fulfill every desire of mine in the way that I think that he should, he almost always comes through. And it also benefits me to think this way. Why would you want to think otherwise? Why would you convince yourself, as Laura Doyle might call it, as a spouse-fulfilling prophecy? Why would you tell yourself that your partner's, incompetent and perpetually going to disappoint you? It doesn't benefit you. And at the same time, your partner will disappoint you. And this is normal. And you really want to kind of develop your disappointment muscles in a partnership with a flawed person who is just as flawed as you. So ironically, when you humbly hold this perspective in partnership, people, but if you're a woman listening who is in partnership with men, if you hold this perspective, men happen to get more inspired to find all the unique ways that they can care for you. You'd be surprised. When you are gracious and appreciative and respectful, men will go out of their way to please you, and it doesn't actually take that much to make us happy. And know that you will always want more. Feminine energy is desirous by nature. She is the void that wants to be filled. So I'm not saying man or woman. The feminine inside each of us wants more. So if you are a woman, you are wired to desire. And you're always going to want more, always, even if you seemingly have everything, which many of you listening, be honest with yourself. In the grand scope of things, you do have everything. You have a roof over your head. You're being fed. You are not worried about survival. Like, our standards of living have raised exponentially. Most people listening in the Western world do not have to worry about survival. This is a really big deal. And for those of you that are in a survival situation, that's not going to resonate, and I understand. And I hope that you do whatever you need to do to find work and take care of yourself. If you're in an abusive situation, I hope that you do whatever you need to do to get out of that. I'm not referring to things like that. That's a completely different conversation. So, but if you're not in a survival situation and when you look around you, there's everything to be content about, you can soften and you can be so grateful for what you have, and it's okay to want more. Just know that no matter how many of your desires get fulfilled, there is an inherent pleasure that we all have in simply desiring. In the book Existential Kink by, I forgot the author's name, Caroline something. She mentioned that there is pleasure in having, but there's also pleasure in not having. It's the experience of pleasure. It's the experience of desire, So just know that no matter how many of your desires get fulfilled, you're always going to want more. So don't use your unfulfilled desires and your disappointments around that to suggest that you're in the wrong relationship. No, you're always going to want more. It never ends. So it's kind of like that hedonistic treadmill where you accomplish one thing and you're happy about it, and then you want to accomplish the next thing. That's just part of human nature nowadays. You want more. Nothing wrong with it. Just notice it and don't get sidetracked by it. If you go online and you go on TikTok and Instagram and you see 40 relationships that had wonderful moments that you've never experienced, and you've seen all of that within the first 15 minutes of waking up, and you're scrolling Instagram first thing in the morning, and you look over at your partner who's snoring and has stinky breath, and like I said, you've already seen 40 better relationships than you seemingly have right now. Yeah, you're going to be like, you're going to have big desires for what they have and perceive that you don't have that. So don't hate your partner. Hate the game. Hate the social media that is tricking you to think that everybody's got it better than you. It's not true. It's all illusion. Again, not talking about abuse here and women who left toxic relationships, abusive relationships. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're with a regular, loving, run-of-the-mill partner. You're 7 years in and you're comparing your relationship to someone who has been with their partner for 6 months and they're still in the honeymoon phase. You guys are building a life together. Some of you guys might have kids. There's shit going on and you have to get through challenges and weather some storms. Don't compare your nuanced, messy, multifaceted, not black and white relationship to someone who is presenting a very polarizing view of their partnership and presenting it in a way that is designed to make you jealous and envious, because that makes them feel validated in their decisions. And people love feeling validated, especially with viral videos that are really polarizing. So don't take those too seriously. I did a podcast episode a little while back about how social media is ruining your relationship. Listen to that one because I really believe it nowadays. So that is it. One of the biggest gifts you can give yourself in a relationship is, paradoxically, hilariously, the gift of giving yourself permission to feel disappointed by your partner, because they are human and they will disappoint you as much as life itself disappoints you. There's going to be many times in life where you don't get your way, and that's the same thing happens in partnership. So take a lot of the disappointment that you feel with a grain of salt. In my online course, Both Feet In, I talk about how to create like rituals and create safe spaces to process these feelings without taking every thought connected to the feelings at face value. There's a lot of practices on discharging your emotions so that you don't stuff them down or dump them on your partner, and have much more productive conversations about your desires. So that's it. This is the last opportunity to take advantage of my flash sale. I threw a little sale for my birthday. I just turned 31. You can take 31% off any of my courses using my code BIRTHDAY31. That's Both Feet In, my conscious communication course, my Watch Your Language masterclass, or 7 days to quit comparing your relationship. I am putting all of these in my show notes, along with some other links like working with me, joining my Patreon, or asking me anything on Wizio. I'm going to put them all in the show notes. Last thing, for our Patreon call, our next one is going to be on September 20th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And by the way, my husband, Preston, will come on to be answering questions live when and if we hit 150 patrons. We are actually really close. We are at about 120, and that has grown very quickly. So I'm fairly confident that in the near future, I'm hopeful that we can finally have Preston come on, because he's a little camera shy, or at least I think so. I have a feeling that he tells himself he's camera shy, but he's extremely wise, has a lot to say. He's my counterpart, my shadow and my light at the same time. So if you want to know what it was like for him being on the other side of my relationship anxiety, but also he has experienced his own relationship anxiety as well and has come out the other side. Amazingly, even though our relationship is more complex and crazy and beautiful, we are more in love than ever. So we have a lot to say as a couple that's been in partnership for 11 years, since we were basically babies. And we're very hopeful that people listen, because I think there's so much that people are not seeing. They're getting all of their relational information from social media and just seeing little snapshots. So I share this podcast with you to share our story and what what it's been like for us to grow up together and learn about love together. And sometimes my husband says things that are just so freaking wise. And personally, I'd really love to have him on. I think everyone would benefit from it a lot. So my Patreon's open to everybody. We do one call per month. And during that call, I answer questions, both from the comments. I open up questions in the comments 3 days before for all of our patrons to ask. And I answer the top 3 voted ones. And then on the day, which in this case will be September 20th, I open up to our top patrons, which is ALC Superfam. Those patrons can attend the call live. And actually, after I answer those 3 questions from the chat, the comments, you can ask questions live and unmute yourself, and we can have like a live conversation. So that is really exciting. I also do a short meditation embodiment practice to get you in your body, so you'll be more grounded and receptive for the information we're presenting to you. And that's it. We do that once a month. And I also, on Patreon, share the stuff I'm too squeamish to post about on social media. So if you want more exclusive content, definitely check it out. I'll include the links to all of this in the show notes. If you want to work with me, I am taking one-on-one clients, although this week I will be hosting a retreat. So I'm going to have my Wizio off, but you can always submit it once I'm back, especially depending on when you listen to this. So that's all. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a phenomenal day. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care and good luck. Thanks so much for listening to the Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.